is required, if it's over a certain caliber, to be test fired and put into registry. This means that when Moore had gotten pinched earlier in his life for going in to seek revenge on someone who had beat up a friend of his and had come in waving a gun, and the police acquired that gun, they test fired and were able to notice the same striations on the test fired bullet to the ones that were found inside of Brandie and Nireah.
Because guns have a fingerprint.
Yeah. On July 29th, Adrian, the friend that was driving around in the car with both Brandie and Nireah, had confirmed that the person that was in the car that they had met at the gas station was Paul Moore. So they went to interview him because all of Nireah's friends had heard about Paul and how lovely he was. Everyone said that she was smitten, and they knew that they were going to meet up at some point in time.
Mm-hmm.
They go to question Moore, who said yes, they did meet at the gas station, and no, that they hadn't actually met up again afterwards. The police noticed that there was a burn on his arm, I don't know, from setting a fire with gasoline to maybe a Jeep Cherokee? I'm not sure.
It's just a little incriminating.
Yeah. And he said that he and a friend were messing around, and his friend accidentally burned him on the arm.
With, like, what, a flamethrower?
Right. Fucking idiot. I hate him. They weren't able really to get him on a ton until they started putting pressure on Ward. Ward had been convicted of having a gun with no license on 2 separate occasions. Possession of pot. Okay, I'm sorry, who cares about pot?
I mean, right?
Resisting an officer and public intoxication.
I mean, come on. If we all haven't done that before, then...
He was also supposedly with Moore when Moore was arrested for seeking revenge on someone who had beaten up his cousin.
Mm-hmm.
During this time, they not only found the .45 caliber Ruger in his car, but he also had an assault rifle and a shotgun that were reported stolen but were found in the trunk because he's obviously very slick.
Yeah, well, that was nice of whoever stole them to put them right back.
Yeah, exactly. Which also means that there had to have been intent there for him to utilize them in some sort of crime.
Yeah.
Moore was able to produce a permit for the handgun, which his mother had purchased and kept in his home for protection. On a day prior to them meeting Brandie and Nireah, he had brought his gun with him and left it in a vehicle belonging to one of his friends. The wife found it and was not happy about having a random gun in her car.
Oh, so, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know...
What if the safety's not on and I sit on it?
I mean, this man is so stupid. On July 21st, it was finally returned to him, even though he told someone to hang on to it. Because why not hang on to a gun that you don't have a permit for? The police were able to search his home, where they found blood in the kitchen, in the hall, and in an entryway.
Sounds like they beat both of them up before they left the apartment then. Also, too, because of the blunt force trauma and the injuries to the chest.
But it was only seen really on Brandie, so I'm not sure if it was because he was, quote, trying to calm her down after he, shot her friend in the face. They also found a bullet that would match the caliber and the type of bullet that were found in Brandie and Nireah's bodies.
Oh, sweet babies.
An officer would say later they had time to think about what they were doing. It wasn't in the heat of the moment because they were able to drive all the way across town to somewhere, I want to say it was like 20 or 25 minutes away from where they lived.
Clearly you went there with intent to do something.
Yeah. When the police confronted him with the evidence and the fact that his gun and the bullets that were shot from the gun matched, he said that he had reported it stolen. Later, it would be known that it was not stolen.
Mm-hmm.
Ward rolled over on him. So obviously that we don't have to worry about anything only came from Moore's side because he thought he was impervious to anything. Ward was not charged with murder because he didn't. The jury noted that he absolutely was not a part of the actual murder. He did not enact the murder, but he was convicted for arson and confinement, including a 3-year probational violation. He got a 9-year sentence because he rolled over on Moore.
Mm-hmm.
Moore was charged on August 5th with 2-count Class B felony criminal confinement and 1-count felony arson, as well as murder of the 2 women. Obstruction of justice as well, because he lied to the police.
Yeah.
Duh. He received 120 years for the murder, for the confinement, and arson. He has tried to appeal, as most people do, and sometimes it's involuntary appeals. In his case, he cited that he had received ineffective assistance for the trial because his counsel hadn't called his grandfather as a witness. His grandfather was on the witness list, but wasn't called up to bat, I guess. And he was mad about that because they had failed to call the only exculpatory witness who would have corroborated the defense theory.
That he coached him on, probably.
He thought he was entitled to a new trial because of that, and also because he said that the prosecution utilizing the ballistics test as evidence wasn't brought to his attention.
What?
Idiot. And that it was acquired illegally from a prior arrest. It's painful.
And then the courts were probably like, no, we're pretty sure we know the law.
Yeah. Yeah, he didn't. There was something too, because Ward rolled over on him, and he took a lesser sentence because he rolled over on him. He gave state's evidence.
I mean, I guess.
Moore had amended a petition for post-conviction relief on May 3rd, 2013, almost 10 years after he's been in jail. It's a little bit under. It's about 2 months. He said that the prosecution had failed to disclose existence of an informal agreement or understanding between itself and a key witness. They said that the presentation of perjured testimony and the key witness should entitle him to a new trial. The prosecution said, no, you knew about this. He and the jury knew that there was an agreement in effect to give Ward a lesser sentence. His grandfather continues to say that he was with Moore all day the next day and that they had gone to return the Roto-Rooter themselves and that he couldn't possibly have been a part of it.
I don't understand how he thinks that excuses him or accounts for his whereabouts the evening before.
Clarence McGee got 10 years for being an accomplice. All of the charges that were appealed were upheld.
Good.
Yes, because you deserve to rot in jail for murdering 2 people for no reason.
Yes, beyond what anybody's natural life could be.
The thing that bothers me the most, and like I said, there have been quite a few different things on the unfortunate prevalence of trans women to be subject to massive amounts of violence, is that they're often reported as bearded women.
That's horrendously offensive.
Yeah. Nireah is buried under her birth name, Gregory Johnson. Her family said that they didn't recognize that she preferred to be called Nireah.
You know what, though? I at least can say that I'm happy in this case that there was justice for both of them. And I think that there need to be more protections for trans people.
Brandie's daughter is completely
without a mother
because of this jerk who decided that he needed to protect his own sexuality by murdering somebody who had no other choice but to be themselves.
Exactly. Also, too, I wanted to say that families have also lost a relative as well.
Yeah.
So it's like, and friends. So all these people are grieving.
Yeah, for some idiot to be like, I'm not into dudes. She's not a dude, man.
Because you feel so emasculated.
Yeah, you know how hard it is to be a lady. We got a lot of things to worry about. So that was the unfortunate horror.
Well, I am horrified and I'm angry. So thanks for that. But it sends a really strong message, I think, and it needs to be talked about. And there needs to be so much more protection for trans people. They need rights just like everybody else.
Yeah, and we need to be able to protect each other no matter what.
And I've been wanting to say this too. I feel like it doesn't get talked about a whole lot, but gays, lesbians, bisexual people need to support trans people. Just because we've fought for our right to now marry who we want does not mean that we get to completely leave all of these other people that are part of the community in the dust. We still have to fight for them too, just like they've fought for everybody else.
In that case also, we need people that are cisgendered straight as well to be protecting. Everyone should be able to have rights. It's human. Like
yeah, absolutely.
Being something then you're assigned at birth gender doesn't make you not human. And that's kind of where that's where people need to start kind of realizing that it's not okay. And it's certainly not been okay for a long time, but it needs to stop now.
Yeah, but I think that there's a level of maybe blindness that happens where the LGBTQ community think that there's this level of equality now just because marriage. And it's not over. It's far from over.
Okay, I'm here for what I'm hoping is going to be less upsetting.
So you definitely know this place. I'm going to talk to you about the Manteno State insane asylum.
See, and I guessed Piatone, and you said no, and I was like, what else is around here, though?
I only half lied to you because you said Piatone, so I was like, technically, I can still keep it a secret. So here's why I'm going to talk about this in relation with LGBT stories that we're covering this month. Mm-hmm. And it's because before the American Psychiatric Association declassified homosexuality as a mental disorder in 1973, aversion therapy was routinely used in hopes that it would prevent or eliminate the homosexual behavior.
Right, and it's still used today.
Sadly. In the more brutal therapy sessions, the shock treatments were delivered directly to male patients' genitals every time the patient experienced any form of positive response from the slides being shown to him.
Yucko.
And in the 1940s, especially, homosexuals were frequently involuntarily committed to psychiatric facilities by their families, with the hospitals promising that the patient would eventually leave the facility cured of their, quote, sexual illness. Not only were they not allowed to leave, but they were often subjected to cruel and inhumane treatments, including castrations, torture drugs, shock therapy, as we just discussed, and sometimes lobotomies.
Right. And this, unfortunately, is something that still goes on in some...
like ex-gay camps.
Yeah, those.
Which...
it still happens.
Thankfully, a lot of them have been closed down. The biggest one, I believe, was Exile, and that closed a year ago.
I'm not sure. But thank you for closing it.
I went down a very strange rabbit hole with this, trying to figure out what I was going to talk about. In 1927, the state of Illinois purchased over 1,000 acres of land, earmarked for a massive mental health complex to be known as the Manteno State Hospital. And in December of 1930, Manteno officially opened the hospital. Its first 100 patients transferred quickly from the nearby Kankakee State Hospital. The facility quickly grew, and in 1936, an additional 200 acres were purchased to expand the campus.
Yeah, it was very large, right? Before they started tearing down some of it.
It was really huge. The earliest years proved to be an operational nightmare, however. Manteno was funded and established in the midst of the Great Depression.
Oh, good.
Compounding the hospital's early woes were medical staffing shortages brought about by World War II, in which qualified doctors and nurses across the United States were called to assist with the war effort. What happened was medical staffing at Manteno eventually became such a concern. High school dropouts were allowed to be hired as nurses, and at one point, out of 120 nurses on staff, only 16 had actual training.
Oh, good. Yeah, that sounds like something you'd want.
It wasn't the best of times. That's one. So in 1934, the health budget was suddenly cut by 29%. Despite this, Manteno still watched its occupancy more than double over the next 2 years. And in 1936, shock therapy was introduced. And a year later, Manteno also added a tuberculosis sanitarium.
Right, which was super common at the time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The first disaster for Manteno was when a typhoid fever epidemic, which lasted from July until December of 1939, resulted in an estimated 60 deaths. At its peak, Manteno was one of the largest facilities of its kind in the world.
Wow.
Over 10,500 meals were served on a daily basis.
Wow.
The facility power plant generated over 2,500 kilowatts of power, and up to 225 tons of coal were required to run the operations each day.
Wow.
So just to put it into perspective.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow.
Yeah, and I knew like bits and pieces about it, but when I did my research, I learned so much more. Over the years, the hospital endured its share of controversies. Stories of patients attacking nurses would surface, and rumors of patient abuse seemed to persist.
Well, but it was also an early days mental hospital.
There were allegations, and I have to stress allegations, of the U.S. military conducting secret medical testing at Manteno during World War II. Patients allegedly would unknowingly be injected with malaria in an attempt by the military to find a remedy for the illness. In 1941 alone, 462 patients allegedly died from the experimentation, while another 198 felt that they needed to get out and escape the facility.
Well, yeah.
There were allegations allegations of sexual abuse, and later it was revealed that in the 1950s, the hospital had in fact been conducting experimental surgeries on patients without their consent. I read an actual news article about that when it leaked. That was in the 70s they found out.
Here's what I've read on that, and this is just what I've read. When you are committed to an institution, especially in earlier days before there were better rights, and certainly not ones that are great, but better. You cannot give consent because you are mentally handicapped. It's the same way